Today's episode is brought to you by Swish, the ultimate gift for the Dons fan in your life. Get them a video from their favourite Essendon player. James, I feel like there's only one player that anyone would want right now.
Yeah, he's hot property at the moment, Rob. I think because there's not too many other options. But the one and only Zachy Merritt, I'd be ordering one from Zach.
Yeah, if you use the code the Sash, you get 10% off at checkout. That's the Sash for 10% off at swish.com. You can find the link in our episode description and on all of our social media. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Sash. Definitely not the official podcast of the Essendon Football Club. I'm your host tonight, Jesse, and joining me for our third opposition preview podcast for the year is Dave from the Creed, the one of, so I hear there are a few Port Adelaide podcasts lingering around these days. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing good. Yeah. No, there is a few lingering around. They all do. They're all great blokes that do are involved in the Port kind of content creation space, so they're all good. But you know, we're one of the ones that tends to spend 3 or 4 hours a week talking about it. So if anyone's ever wanting to listen to us rattle on for ages, we're the ones.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for joining us. You're a much happier man, I would say, this week than probably how you were this time the previous week. Unfortunately, us Essendon supporters can't say the same for ourselves. It's pretty doom and gloom for us at the moment. But talk us through the weekend's game. I guess just for listeners out there, Port had a pretty big win over Richmond at home at Adelaide Oval. The exact scoreline, I can't actually tell you. Do you remember, Dave? I know it was about 60, 70 points or something along those lines that you ended up beating them by.
Yeah, 72 points, 21-14 to 9-14. So, yes, a nice bounce-back win from what was a pretty, everything, toys out of the cot kind of performance in the first week against Collingwood. So, it was exactly kind of what we expected, probably regardless of if we were even looking before the Collingwood match. We're thinking we should be beating Richmond by, no disrespect to them, but then, we lose badly. Richmond have the win of the century in some media circles against Carlton, and suddenly you're like, what's going to happen here? But we kind of went into the weekend still thinking, Carlton probably should have won that game. They had it in the bag and then they just let it go. And we just thought if we can bring the intensity because we were well down on pressure and all those things against Collingwood in that first week. So it's what we expected. So what it tells us about the season going forward was a lot of Port fans are still unsure because we are probably still more concerned about what we dished up in week one versus doing what we sort of hoped to do against Richmond. It was good to win by 72 points rather than, scrape along the line 30 or 40. We were up by 86 at one point as well until we kind of, backed off a little bit late in the game. So it was a very significant win. Some good signs from some of the youngsters out there, but some injury attrition again, which is starting to become a real concerning theme for our season so far. But the win itself was, has made us all feel a little bit better than we were feeling this time last week.
And there was some pretty standout performances over the weekend. Some of your big players racking up some attractive numbers. I mean, the captain leading from the front with 39 disposals and 2 goals. Ollie Wines kicking the goal, and he had 33, which is not what Essendon supporters want to see because he has a habit of putting us to the sword. And a unfamiliar name to some, relatively younger player, you would have been quite happy with his performance. Jace Burgoyne with 32 disposals and a couple of goals. Can you tell us where he was playing over the weekend?
He's playing up on he loves the wing, and that's kind of where we're deploying him this year. A lot of people got to know him in the finals last year when he had a real great performance against Hawthorn when we threw him into the back line, but he's really wants to play that kind of wing role, that outside run and provide, and particularly with how we're wanting to play a little bit more like run and carry, like our kick to handball was 1-1 this weekend, like a lot of run and movement and overlapping run, and he's kind of getting involved in that and getting up the field and snagging a couple of goals, which he's doing a lot more confidently. Early in his career, he had a few pot shots at goal, but he kind of looked like, newborn giraffe, like kind of figuring out, like getting in front of goals and going, oh crap, I've got a shot at this, and kicking and kind of. But he looks just so much smoother and more confident. Like he believes in his ability to actually be an AFL player now, which early in young players' career, they're still trying to figure out the Saturday Night Lights, so to speak. But yeah, he's a really, really exciting player. One that obviously Port fans, this son of Peter Burgoyne, obviously Sean's nephew as well. Burgoyne family's got a lot of history at Port Adelaide, and to see him come through and actually be not just a squad player, but he's actually looking like a burgeoning star at the moment now. And another son of a gun in Jackson Mead, Darren Mead's kid out there with 30 disposals. So there's a few sons of guns out there, along with the new recruits and some old heads like Travis Spoke still running around having a decent crack as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I was not sure whether Jace Burgoyne was up to it. So it would be really pleasing now seeing a game like that. Probably, I would say, his best game for the football club by quite a stretch. I don't watch a lot of Port games. I don't follow too much, but I am a footy head, and I think that you'd be pretty rapt to see someone like him have a game like that.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's still so young. I can't think of his exact age, but he got drafted at the end of 2021. So, he's 3 years in. He only kind of broke into the side properly early last year because we weren't even sure he was going to be an out-and-out starter at the start of this time last year. So, whereas now he's just best 22 absolutely comfortably, and his trajectory is exponentially growing as he gets more confidence, knowing now that he's part of that setup rather than just fighting to break in. He's making roles his own, like that wing spot, and really, really exciting a lot of Port fans to see all these young ones coming through, because we were kind of looking older a couple of years ago, but while we're still in that middle of the average ages, there's a lot of good youngsters coming through, and certainly a couple on the weekend showed their good stuff again as well. I mean, a debutant and a couple of the young ones. But yeah, Jace I think he got 4 coaches' votes on the week. No, he might have got 7. He's in the coaches' votes this week. So, as you said, one of the games that he's been noticed more over than most in the past, maybe aside from that Hawthorn semi-final last year.
And I mean, I've got Jason Horne-Francis in the Supercoach team. I thought he was going to be a great DPP option, and just doesn't really look like he's hit his strides this year. I mean, another 1 goal, 17 disposals. I mean, where are they playing him? Are they playing him more half forward, swinging him through the middle? I mean, as far as I'm aware, he's an on-baller, and it confuses me as to why you guys aren't playing him there.
Yeah, he did spend a fair bit of time up forward on the weekend, I believe, and he did kick a goal or two. But he is an on-baller. I think he does have a bit of... I know because he was starting on the bench last year, and it's been said that he actually said he likes starting the bench because he gets a little bit overexcited at the start of the game, and he actually does have some asthma issues, I believe, as well. So there is a little bit of they're still getting used to how his tank works. But he seems to the end of last year, and certainly in preseason and in the Indigenous All Stars game, he was. If Jai Simkin had it at the game, he would Horne-Francis would have won that medal in the All Stars game. So. It was curious that last week against Collingwood, I was kind of a little bit critical of just the fact he couldn't exert enough influence, although that was 22 players' problem for most of that game. But yeah, I think he will come into his own in the middle. I think it's just we're trying a few things. With Butters being out, it's kind of changed the mix up a little bit as well, because Wines and Drew are more in there, and whether it's just changed the balance of how Horne-Francis has been used. But yeah, I think he got a little bit frustrated in the first quarter last week as well. There was a bit of argy-bargy at the end of the first quarter with Horne-Francis getting into it with a few Richmond players. So I think he just kind of got, rested a little bit down forward, and just to calm him down. And he did give off to Joe Berry for Joe Berry's first AFL goal when Horne-Francis was dead in front and could have kicked it himself. So it was a nice sign of maturity and teamwork there. I think you'll be okay with him in your Supercoach team. And just, I know I saw it on Twitter and stuff this week that a few people were like, do we trade him out already? But
no,
yeah, I think it's just been a slower start to the year than we were all expecting a fiery start because he had a good preseason. But yeah, I think there's just a lot of change as well with the fact that Lukos just went down early last week. He's out for the net half a year now with a fractured kneecap, which is not good for, a guy that we had high hopes for to change how we play this year. So Horne-Francis got swung around a little bit with the forward line change-ups last weekend as well. And he's an incredible forward in Horn Francis. He's just one of those players that's so good at everything that sometimes finding that right role within the game situation of a particular game.
Well, you're very lucky to have him. Essendon would love a few more players like him on their list. Turning our attention, I guess, just away from some of those individual players, I wouldn't mind just getting your intake on the year so far. Obviously, first round was disappointing. Playing, away from home at the G is never easy as an interstate team. But then the rebound this week, I mean, just firstly, looking at that Collingwood game, what do you think went wrong? And then comparing that, you don't want to look into it too much. Obviously, you were versing Richmond, who, is, we know, a team that is not fielding a whole lot of experience. But I guess comparing the two games, what was it that went wrong in that game against Collingwood? And what do you think that you did right in the game against Richmond?
Oh, the Collingwood game. That's we dissected it fairly heavily last week, and I still don't know what exactly to pinpoint because there's just so much went wrong. I come down to it's a little bit of preparation and just not having the conditions were it was 32 and humid apparently over in Melbourne that weekend. Like it was just whether we weren't prepared for the conditions, but we should have been. We were a little bit too nice. I know that criticism was made a lot. I found it funny in the Richmond game on the weekend that we were really getting stuck into a few of the Richmond players, which I love. I love the argy-bargy footy as long as it's it doesn't go over the line. But whereas we let Dan Houston run right on us, which I just don't think was right to do. We should have been locked in a little bit more. It is just footy does knuckle down. Like we've seen the results, like St Kilda over Geelong this week. You can even out a lot of your talent deficiencies with just effort and intent. And good game planning as well, and we just didn't do any of that right against Collingwood. And Collingwood, we don't play the MCG well against them either. We've been belted over there 3 times in a row now. So it was the worst case of it, and I think it just got worse because, along with the fact that we struggle against them, we just weren't prepared either. Didn't have the games in the legs like Collingwood did. So, whereas Richmond, we did come out with the right intent because if we come out the way we did against Collingwood, we would have been struggling against Richmond too. We should have still beaten them, but maybe it would have been 30 or 40 points, whereas we, beat them by 12 goals. So some of those game plan things we got going a little bit better. There is without Charlie Dixon as a focal point, we're trying to run and carry the ball a little bit more. Eyes down to targets, which, a lot of people said, we should have been doing earlier last year as well and in the previous years. But a little bit. It isn't, a lot of players learning roles, which didn't help against a Collingwood side that just overwhelmed us as well. So we were, out in our feet there a little bit, whereas we got a little bit more of that going against Richmond. And I'm hoping that little bit of confidence in the legs can help going forward because, I still don't know what the rest of the season holds. It's 2 very opposite results and you can't gauge too much from 2 weeks of footy that are so diametrically opposite to each other. But,
Tell me about it. We're feeling the same way.
Yeah.
We're all feeling, I think as a supporter base, very similar, but in a lot of ways we're much more dark than you blokes because at least you've had a couple of finals wins in the consistent era of time. But
I wasn't going to say it, but we just released a Gernzi that we wore in 2004 today, so it kind of is a good little parallel there for you. That'll be.
And what's that? Is that the retro nature? Is it similar to the one that you've got in the back behind you?
It is exactly that one. So I've got the Nike one there from.
I actually really like that jersey. I reckon that's one of the best jerseys you've had.
It's nostalgic for me because I was 16 in 2004 when we won the premiership, and my mum bought me that to wear to the finals that year. I didn't go to the grand final, but the 2 that were at home, and so it's got a good. I was the perfect age for that kind of Guernsey. A lot of the old heads aren't as into it, but those kids like me that grew up with when Port came into the AFL, that Guernsey is iconic for us. So they've just released the Macron version, just dropped today. Alberton is open until 8:00 tonight for people to go in and buy it, and so people are frothing about it. So wearing that one in a couple of weeks, but was wearing that one around when you last won a final. So I'm sorry to put that one out there.
Cheers. Appreciate it.
I'm not I'm not one of those ones that makes those jokes usually. It's just you brought up the finals thing. And I was like, oh, God, we just dropped the 2004 Gernzi today. So, yeah.
Oh, look, well, we've worn it for a long time. So it
I
honestly...
have a lot of respect for you guys dealing with it because it's rough. We get it with the
The way
prelim.
I would describe it is if you've got a hot mum and you've grown up with a hot mum your entire life, it's annoying for the first little while, but then eventually you're like, yeah, whatever, she's hot. Like, I've heard it a million times and it just doesn't bother me.
Like
So
the super
after,
bad thing, right? Like, yeah.
yeah, you're correct. After 15, 20 years of hearing the same gag, it really is, water off a duck's back. But
Yeah.
we digress. I'm keen to see the kit. Are they releasing that as the kit for the rest of the year?
No, it's just we're wearing it in round 4 against St Kilda. So yeah, just a one-off game retro kit, which we've done the last 3 years. We've worn a few of them in just one-off games. So I know a lot of people would be keen to see it as a Clash Guernsey, but I don't think that's on the cards. I think it's just a little bit of fun for a game, which I love too. It's just a little nod to history without getting too crazy about it. So yeah,
nice. Well, the Bombers played over the weekend, and your crosstown rivals absolutely put us to the sword. It was a very tough game to sit through. I would say, one of the more challenging games to watch of recent years as Essendon supporters. And it's really just the same old issues at Essendon that are appearing, being, a lack of accountability defensively, and then just a lack of execution in the simple areas of football. And it just, in a lot of ways, what's confusing about the game is, we lose by 61 points, but we kick 100 points, and we concede 161 points. Zach Merritt has 36 disposals and 4 goals. The debutant in Tommy Edwards, Western Districts, Waffle, leading goal kicker, kicked 8 in his first 4 quarters playing in a VFL and then an AFL practice match, and then in his debut game kicks 3. So there's some positive signs, but I wouldn't mind, Dave, just getting your understanding firstly of, I don't know if you've really been on any social media or any football talk back, but I'm sure you've seen a lot of people talking about Essendon's game and some of the vision. What's your take on the football club at the moment, where it's at, and probably just more recently, your take on the first 2 games of the season?
Yeah, I caught little bits of the game on the weekend because as a Port fan, my favourite team is Port, and anyone playing the Crows. So I was disappointed for you guys as well. Yeah, and I caught a little bit of the last week as well. It's a bit of a, for me, and just seeing what I see on talk, like whether it be talkback or the internet or whatever, it still feels like a team just treading water, going in circles without really any exact direction. The recruitment over the last couple of years, I mean, the big one I've seen talked about a little bit over the weekend was Dylan Shield, just like, should he play again because of his age profile and what he's providing. I don't know where you're at on that, and I don't have an in-depth knowledge. It's just I don't see much out of him. And then the talk, a lot of people are saying like, what is this guy providing at this point? But then who do you go to as well? What can you razz him up to provide something? The recruitment, we were with our defensive struggles. Ben Mackay was talked about in Port circles when he was leaving, moving a few years ago, and people were saying, should we go after him? And a few people were like, no, we shouldn't. And, I believe teams can take, we took Aaliyah from Sydney and turned him into an All-Australian because we just worked out a way to work with him and he locked in. So whether that's a Ben Mackay problem or just is he a symptom of what's going on at Essendon and just a little bit of malaise and a lack of direction? Because you guys started last year with the Essendon Edge stuff, and everyone was like, they're on, and then it's just falling away again. And it's just they don't. There's nothing that scares you about Essendon, and I'm not being cocky. Like, I don't mean that in any disrespect. It's just there's no players at Essendon that truly terrify. I mean, Zach Merritt's fantastic, and I think he was the highest rated player in Champion Data this weekend. which is insane for like losing game by so much. But the Crows have done this to Port over the last couple of years, even when they weren't this good. So I'm a little bit worried about what the Crows might do to an injury hit Port in a few weeks when we play them as well. So whether it's I think you played okay against Hawthorn as well, but at times, but yeah, the Crows just ran over the top, and there was no one really standing tall to try to stop it. And that's kind of what worries me about where you guys are at. It's just no one is laying down a gauntlet to say this is the standard we're going to set. Like there's just no one really trying to do that apart from maybe Merritt, who's a lot too much on his own. Sam Durham's fantastic as well, but he's probably still got a bit more to go to get to that level. And there's just there's a lot of passengers from how I'm watching it. A lot of guys that objectively have the talent, but just not producing enough with it. And it's sad to see for a club that's got so much history. Obviously, I grew up with Essendon, being a threat and a scary team, and that's just not the team I see over the last few years. Even last year in Gather Round, we were a little bit worried, but then we won comfortably, and it wasn't the fear factor wasn't there soon after the game started. So
it's interesting you mentioned that fear factor. It's actually one of the questions that I did want to ask, and in a way you answered it, but I wouldn't mind asking you the question more formally again, which is, how do you feel when you come up against Essendon year on year? You mentioned that there's no fear that you have, so that's one element, but I guess based on prior form, it's been quite a while since we've challenged you. I mean, there's been games where it's been close. I mean, last year it was not close at all. It was 69 points in the end, but the previous couple of games that we played against each other were sort of within 5 points. So there has been an element of competitiveness in those games, but regardless of that, sticking to the original question, how do you feel when you see next round you've got Essendon? Are you kind of licking your lips thinking here's an easy win most years, or?
The last couple, last year I remember when we previewed going into it, we were kind of like, they might be up and about, but what we're always thinking, like, we know our best footy is, like, I think it's something about the last two results shows is Port are a lot better than the worst of the competition, but struggle against the best. And I don't see Essendon in that top six echelon, or at the moment, some might say not even the top eight. So it's kind of those top 4 to 6 teams that are really in that premiership contention kind of area and playing their best footy that we really usually struggle against. And then down the table is where we often get out. That's where we've been seen as flat track bullies over the years, because we will beat up on the poor sides. Occasionally have a struggle game, like a random one that just, I remember it was, having to beat Gold Coast at Adelaide Oval a few years ago, in a late win, and that was when Gold Coast was, I think Dewey was still coach, and no disrespect to Dewey, but they just weren't that good of a team at the time, and we just had a random struggle game against them. So we do have those, but generally, teams that we should be beating, and I've kind of put Essendon in that at the moment is kind of where I feel, but then my worries are always more with what Port turns up, and that's, I guess that's what says as much about Essendon as you need to know, is I'm more worried about what Port turns up. I don't think Essendon can beat if we play similar to how we played against Richmond, I don't think Essendon at the moment have that kind of run to go with it. We've been hit by a couple more injuries out of last weekend as well, though, so what kind of lineup you see from us is going to affect our synergy. And in turn, if you guys have had that result that we had against Collingwood, now that you might get that rocket up the arse, and then you might turn up a little bit. Those are all the intangibles that are unknown. But just looking at it on paper, I just feel like there's not enough fear factor there for me for Essendon. And again, I mean that with total respect. It's just what I saw on the weekend from them was a lot of traffic cone stuff, which was disappointing. But again, Adelaide they look really, really good. And, in 10 weeks, if Adelaide are still up and about the top of the table, it might look a lot less worse than it does now. But at the moment, it just didn't look that good. Yeah. Well, here's hoping Adelaide don't look that good in a few weeks either. But, I'm a little bit worried about how they look this year. So,
I mean, look, if you don't defend, you make every team look good. And the one thing that Adelaide has in spades is some really damaging offensive players. Where you can get Adelaide is putting more pressure on them defensively and making them work harder the other way, which we didn't really do. And I feel like if you bring the defensive hustle against Adelaide, a lot of their players do have a tendency to turn the ball over in under pressure as well. But when, it's training cone stuff, as what you said, Dave, I mean, if you don't defend, you make every team look great. So that's all I want to talk about regarding that game because it's in the past. Yeah. Let's look forward to the game on Thursday night. Now, for those listeners out there, if you're not aware, we are unfortunately having to watch Essendon play again on Thursday night. Hopefully, we have something more to cheer about. 7:30, Marvel Stadium, 16th versus 11th. The odds, Sportsbet have you guys at $1.63, Essendon $2.28. I'd say that's relatively fair based on current and previous form. Looking at the sides and the way that they're going to line up, Dave, you've mentioned there have been a few injuries. I have done a little bit of research and I'm aware that both of your halfbacks that started last week look unlikely to play. That's Ryan Burton, who I actually really rate. Ryan Burton, he's another product of Hawthorn. You nabbed him away, but just another testament to how good the Hawthorn recruiters are. He's just such a good kick, such a silky player. He embodies pretty much all of what Hawthorn's list looks like already in a number of ways. So thankfully, Essendon just does not have to see him or Lachie Jones. I mean, the lower the rate of a halfback that you can field, the better, because at the moment, halfbacks are just absolutely dining out in the Essendon Football Club. So I know those two are injured, and you mentioned Lukosius. Did you previously have any other injuries as well? Anything to make the Bomber faithful aware of that I haven't already mentioned?
I got scrolling back on my injury list, but I mean, Butters is still out. Like he's out for another month, at least, 2 to 4 weeks. Zerk Thatcher, a former one of yours, who was actually quickly became a key kind of partner to Willier last year. He's out still for another month and a half.
Let's stop there with Zerk. Given he'd played at the Dons, it's probably worth getting your take on him, Dave. What are your thoughts on him as a player?
Surprisingly, really, really happy with how he went last year. He had a couple of games where he had a couple of moments, but overall he was actually quite, because we brought Radaglia in and then Zerk Thatcher kind of just became part of that Dersma deal, and we were probably a lot of the attention was on Radaglia coming in, and he kind of came in and was a bit inconsistent and made a few, Radaglia meme mistakes, unfortunately, whereas Zerk Thatcher just quietly got down to work and was quite he was locked in and quite, he balanced with Aliir really well and able they kind of bounced off of each other. Whoever went stayed, and Aliir kind of loves having a partner that allows him to spread a little bit and play his best intercept game. Trent McKenzie in the past was one that you wouldn't have thought, but he just worked really well with Aliir as well. And BZT just came in and kind of took that role and had some great moments, whether it be defensive, good marking last year as well. I didn't know much about his game when he came in, but he really came in and locked in, and most Port fans were genuinely quite disappointed when he did his back in the preseason, because we knew that a lot of our hopes were pinned on a fit, those two being fit, because our defense is pretty thin as far as stocks go. And then Radaglia hurt himself in preseason as well. But really, really happy with Zerk Thatcher coming in, because we had, hopes that maybe we could develop him, but him turning into such a key part of that defense so quickly was a pleasant surprise.
It's not surprising. There's a lot of players that leave the Essendon Football Club that become better, or they leave their clubs respectively to come to Essendon and get worse. But again, nonetheless, so we've got Zerk, Zach, Butters, Burton, Lachie Jones, and Lukosius. Who else out of your starting 23 is not there? Radaglia?
Yeah, Radaglia is not on the injury list this week, so he might be available. But Todd Marshall did his Achilles in preseason, is out for the year. And then Ollie Lord's the other tool that we're developing and hoping, and he kicked 4 goals against Brisbane in a final a couple of years ago. So we're kind of hoping he had some injuries last year that kind of took him out of the side and he couldn't find some consistency. But he got hurt his shoulder and is a test in a Sandful preseason match on the weekend. So Ollie Lord would be the one that we're like, oh, we'll bring him in because he's been borderline best 22 anyway. So the forward stocks are really, really thin as far as tall forwards go at the moment. Those are the main ones. There's no other main injury, but it's a lot of key parts across right through the spine of the side. With with Dixon retiring last year, we were like, well, Marshall will finally have that space and it'll change things up. But yeah, a lot of our tall big forwards are down now, and it's really Mitch Georgiades and then our mosquito fleet at the moment. So yeah, that's kind of gives you a little bit of hope maybe in just not having, because obviously against Adelaide you had some talented smalls, but then three huge monsters of players in like Thilthorpe, Fogarty and Tech still running around and you just won't have that tall, muscly threat that they possess at the moment, because we just don't have they're all injured at the moment apart from Georgiades.
Mm. Well, again, that's good to hear. I mean, we need all the help that we can get at this point in time.
I'm glad to provide some hope there for you.
we click onto any hope that we can find at the moment. And look, as far as the Essendon team is concerned, it's looking like we're going to welcome back some experience onto the list, particularly a few names. One potentially, that is an All-Australian who just has had no continuity with his body, and Darcy Parish. We've got also Jaden Laverde that's coming off the injury list and should be available this week. Jordan Ridley. I mean, if we can place... And at the beginning of this year, no one had Laverde in their starting 22, but it really has gone to show over the past 2 weeks just how uncompetitive our defenders are. And the one thing that you get out of out of Jaden Laverde is just competitiveness. I mean, the guys had to play on the tallest forward, against all the teams we've played with versed over the last few years. And, he's been heart and soul. The only issue with Jaden is just his disposal lets him down and his decision-making at times. But with how uncompetitive players like Jackson Pryor and a few of our other small defenders have been, it will be a welcome return, and I really do hope they select him this week. Jordan Ridley, speaks for himself. If we can welcome back Ridley, Laverde and Parish, that, is some serious experience. What a lot of people say, I don't want to make an excuse, but it's a fairly legitimate reason to understand the performance over the weekend, particularly with poor defensive structure and players not covering the ground at an AFL level. Well, we were the most inexperienced and the youngest side fielded all weekend. Mm-hmm. And it goes to show, from what I understand, if you're playing a zone defense, it only takes one player in the chain to not do their role. And it wasn't just one over the weekend. There were a number of players that got completely lost. It's been something in vision that we've seen. The entire team is vastly different to last year. Our defense there's only really 1-2 players in the defense, being McGrath and Mackay, that played in defense last year. Reed didn't play at all. Jackson Pryor's new. And there's a few others in there that we're rotating through. Archie Roberts, he's played 3 or 4 AFL football games. There's just no cohesion back there. Dylan Shields learning the role. Dylan Shields' deficiencies are his deficiencies, but we just have to try and make it work for now. But having, Ridley and Laverde back there with Mackay, you probably, I would say, based on what Scott says, horses for courses, you would look at dropping Reed this week, I would say, based on your tall stocks. If you're not fielding all these giants, we've been found out the past couple of weeks with our, 2 defensive talls that are over 200 centimetres in Mackay and Reed. And Reed was absolutely ragdolled. They're trying to get games into him, but at the moment it's just not working. And you'd hope that they make some pretty crucial changes. How that swings the game, I'm not sure. But if we look back at the Hawthorn game, what Essendon did really well, they did make a contest of it. And outside of that first quarter. Well, it wasn't even really the first quarter. We kept Hawthorn to 0 scores within the first 13 minutes of the first quarter, and there was just an avalanche in the last. They got momentum like Hawthorn does, and they just ran and kicked 5-6 goals just with the blink of an eye, and the game was pretty much put to bed as a result of that. And for the rest of the game, the intent was really good. We were working really hard. Defensively, we were still a bit of a mess, but we made a contest. There was a lot of pressure that we were putting on. And with young sides, you're going to come to expect they're going to be up and down. So it'll be intriguing to see this week. I don't have high hopes that we will win, but all you can hope for as an Essendon supporter is that you just see a bit of grit and you see that contest work, that pressure differential get a little bit better again, and make a contest. You're at home, you're versing Port, they're traveling from interstate. So you really do have to just hope for the best. But I think this year is a pretty good indication of where we're at as a list. And, there has been 15, 20 years of some really poor decisions that have led us to where we are at the moment. And that is the reality of where we are. And we don't have a great list, and we are trying to rebuild. Matt Rose has done a great job with his first year in the draft. We beat Williamstown over the weekend with pretty much a team of 18-year-olds, which is pretty rare to see a team of 18-year-olds winning in the VFL like that. You'll typically see VFL sides usually are made up of, decent AFL players that are on the fringe, and then quite good VFL senior players. And all the players that start over the weekend were our draft picks that Rosa picked up, and they're all looking like exactly what we need. They're athletic and they can kick, and that's not something that Dodoro has done a good job of finding over the past 5 to 10 years. What's your take on the game over the weekend, Dave? What are you looking for in Port, and what do you think are some of the things that you're concerned about when reviewing the Essendon Football Club and how they can compete against you guys?
Those things you just talked about as far as the effort and intent, like I said earlier, that makes up for a lot of deficiencies if you can come in with the right attitude on game day. And that's where we can sometimes get found out, is that we go in with an expectation of winning, or just an expectation of how the game will go, and aren't flexible enough if a team does bring the effort and intent. And the injuries are what concerns me the most. We've just got so much attrition to our side. The cohesion that we were trying to find and found a little bit of last week gets hurt by the fact that Lockie Jones is out, definitely. I think Burton was a test, but he's probably out because he's had a history of injuries, and then Lukosius being out as well. Just the whole structure is going to change a little bit, and it will necessitate the need for a lot more precise ball movement, which is what we're trying to get to a little bit more. But we do overuse the ball a little bit too much, and if you guys do bring the pressure and that intent that you did a little bit more against Hawthorn, because we're not going to. Adelaide really, I think Adelaide were almost 2-1 kicks. They were just forcing down the field and just really just overrunning you with just the speed that the ball came down and just the quickness of it. Whereas we are trying to be a little bit more work the ball down the field in it probably, and that when it goes against Collingwood, we were just turning the ball over all the time, and we haven't worked out the running power to get it back. So if you can apply that pressure, that's what worries me the most, is if we do overuse the ball a little bit, as we're still trying to work some of these youngsters into the game plan and everything, and with just some of the guys that are out, that our side is going to, I don't know if we're going to have any debutants this week, but it might be the likes of Finlayson coming back in, Radaglia coming back in. Those two, whenever they make a mistake, it just, it compounds because fans can get into them and whatnot. It just feels very negative if that happens. So that'll be my worry if we just don't have the right intent going in. You guys do, and we do overuse the ball. It's just that one extra handball. It happened a little bit against Richmond, not too much, but there was occasionally just the option was there to do a little diagonal kick or something. But we're looking for that one that's running through on the overlap, and we try to flick a handball out the back, and it'll be great if it actually does develop to working with the players we've got. But it is a little bit too structured and not enough just utilize, playing the ball as it lies, so to speak, on the field is sometimes something that Port sometimes don't do enough. We try to stick to whatever we're trying to do rather than actually just taking the game that's given to you a little bit. And Yeah, playing Marvel's a stadium that we've played okay over the years, last 5-10 years though. So that's we've Port fans.
Home away from home.
Yeah, yeah. I think I've called it facetiously called it Albert and East at times, but yeah. It's we've had some luck over there, but we've it's that's all in the past now. And the worry for me is just what the lineup looks like and how that synergy goes with just so many injuries. If we were a few more players were coming back rather than leaving the side, I'd be a little bit more confident. But that's probably where a little bit of that worry sinks in, is where just the players that I don't know what the exact makeup of the side's going to be. We're already quite small as far as up forward, and that's going to change the way we can, those forward 50 entries are going to have to be really, really precise, or they're going to have some magic from the likes of Willie. Sam Powell-Pepper came back, looked really good last week. I've got some of those guys are there that weren't there last year, but then we're missing a lot of what worked well last year as well. So. Yeah, I have some concerns, but I think the game. I think there is some bright stars in there as well. Joe Richards has come in looking really good. Joe Berry, one of our draft picks, he's looking like that. The three new recruits in Richards, Berry, and Christian Moraes, who played his first game last week as well. Some of their ball use was really, really good for such inexperienced players. Maybe showed a lot to what we have. And Ollie Wines was getting involved in the running. He's usually such an inside mid, but he was getting involved in a little bit of the runner. Wines is getting, having some fun out there. So there is some signs as to what this new game plan is going to be like, and some of the new roles. Willie Rioli played in midfield a little bit as well. So there is some magnet switching that's happened, which, as you mentioned earlier with Horn Francis, some of that stuff that's moving around. They're trying some things, but when you're trying so much, if you have a game where it's just not, everything's just not working, and you're maybe just missing those handballs, that's when you can get into a bit of a trench battle, which is kind of the worry. I have the confidence that we can go and win. Hopefully, I don't think we're going to smash you like Richmond. I just think we can win the game. But if we do make a few of those crucial mistakes at the wrong times, is when it could be a trench battle there, and you guys get that little run of hope at the right time. It could, that's what happens with a side that's got so much attrition happening and ins and outs and all those things. There's those intangibles that can send a game going the way that some of those ones on the weekend did, that those upsets that we saw on the weekend. So
Well, it'll be intriguing to see how we go. Before I let you go, Dave, we always finish off the Oppo pod with your free predictions being most goals, best on ground, and winner/margin. So I'll throw to you with your three.
Most goals. Yeah, that's a good. We had a few good goal kickers last week. I'm going to go with. I'm just going to go with Georgiades because I really want to see him have that kind of game. Kick 3 or 4 from Georgiades would be really, really nice. He kicked 4 last weekend after, everyone was disappointing against Collingwood. So he's the one that really, if we're going to win this game, we're going to need Georgiades to play that lone big role, and hopefully if that ball movement's working well and we're getting opening up the forward line a little bit, he can find some space to lead into, and his goal kicking is pretty good. So go with Georgiades to kick the most. Connor Rozee, best on. He's, I think, leading disposal getter in the league this year so far. He had 39 last week and had his 35 odd against Collingwood as well, and it was a pretty disappointing game. But I'd say Rosee's the one that I'd be picking just to be best on based on his form. And he had a really good. I think he was best on against in gather round last year against you guys as well. So he's got form again. Yeah, he's got form against you guys, and he's looking good at the start of this season as well. Our captain. And scoreline, 34 points would be just, I'd be okay with that. That would probably mean, that would mean that you guys have been competitive enough. So trying to give you, I'd love to smash you by 72 like we did Richmond as well. I'd have a lot more confidence, but I just don't think it's going to be that kind of game. 34 is probably being if it was, 3 or 4 goals, I wouldn't be surprised either, just because it's away from home. I think you guys might get that little bit of a kick up the butt this week as well, as you should. That's what kind of happens after a result like that. You have some of those harsh, those tough meetings that Port had last week, and then you are forced into trying a few new things to try to get yourself out of that rot. So I'm going to go with 34 points, but if it was less than that, I wouldn't be surprised. But I just want to see us get to 2-1. That's whatever way that happens. With no more injuries as well would be nice, because it seems like every week comes with them at the moment. So yeah. that's where I'm at. Pretty confident we can win, but I don't think it'll be easy either. Because I think you guys are going to come out with a bit of fire in the belly that you should after a result that you had.
Hopefully, we'll see. I mean, Essendon doesn't have a very good tendency to respond well after poor losses. It usually is a 5 or a 6 week the anti-wind in your sails, I guess, the no wind in your sails. You're not moving. But who knows? This could be the reverse of last year, and the year before, where we start off the season poorly and then we come home with wind in our sails. My predictions are most goals. I actually don't mind that call for Georgiades. He does seem to play quite well against us. I mean, he's a good player. I would say, based on the form of our tools, he certainly, is a likely prospect. But, in saying that, if Finlayson plays, he loves playing against the Dons, and he has a habit of kicking goals against us. So I could definitely see him bobbing up, kicking, 2 or 3. As far as best on ground is concerned, I really do think Ollie Wines likes playing against the Bombers as well. He's had a habit of destroying us in the midfield, and we just don't really have any midfielders that can go with him from a size point of view. So if he's, got the wind in his sails and, he's deciding to work hard, there's a lot of good football for him to win, and he's a real danger to us. As far as scoreline is concerned, my head is sitting anywhere between 15 to 80 points at this point in time. So I'm gonna meet that somewhere in the middle and say 45 points to you guys, and there's gonna be quite a lot of very, very angry Essendon supporters. But again, I think we just need to temper expectations. I know it's really hard to hear that. If anyone listening is born pre-1995, get a dog up. Yeah, like I don't think I can remember ever seeing us win a final, and I'm saying temper expectations. So if you've seen a final or you've watched a grand final, just relax a little bit and we'll get there. It's hard to watch at the moment, but you've just got to look for the little things. And last week, there's no excuse for a game like that. We have to hang our heads in shame and watch our team perform terribly and not defend. But if they bring effort and we see the young kids do what they need to do, it's just going to be one of those years at the moment. I'm already saying it round 2 that we're just watching the young kids and that's all we're looking for. So you can save yourself disappointment. Look, Dave, where are you going to be watching the game over the weekend? Do you head to the pub on a Thursday night, or are you going to crack some tins and watch it at home?
I think it'll be crack some tins and watch it at home on Thursday night, because Port Magpies and the Sandful kick off on Friday night down at Alberton, so I'll probably make the trek down for that. Thursday night, just to, if I go out 2 nights in a row,
you're in trouble.
Would have done, I'm in my mid-30s now. When I was a kid, loved it. These days, it's, go out more than 1 night in a row, and I'm looking for a retirement home. So it'd be a couple of quiet tins at home, watching the game, and because I like to watch them with a little bit of a, already taking some notes for reviews, and then go down to Alberton on Friday night and see who the next players that are gonna be up for whenever the next injuries come in at the moment. So
nice.
Yeah,
nice. And my last question for you, Dave, before I let you go: season's predictions. Where do you have Port finishing?
We said a lot in the preseason pods that we'd love to say top 4, but I just don't think. I think this league's so even at this. We surprised ourselves to finish second last year. I just don't think we're going to have that season again. And I think if I'm being positive, I think we're just somewhere between 5th and 8th. Like, I'd love to just sneak into the top half of that bottom 4 of the 8 to get a home final, at least, to kick off the finals. But where that falls is going to entirely come down to, things like, the intent, like percentage and all those things are going to speak for a lot, like they did last year for a few teams up there. And if the injuries kept on hitting, I wouldn't be surprised if we dropped out of finals either. I think we need to start getting players back rather than losing them, and to find ourselves even in the battle for the 8 as it is, because I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of teams looking okay in any given week. Kangaroos win, that's 10 goals on the weekend. Adelaide could be looking likely for one of those spots in the finals that they haven't had. They haven't been in there for 7-8 years. So, yeah, there's spots. The spots are at a premium in that finals, and I just don't know where we're exactly at to be top 4. But hopefully, if we get shit together with our list and injuries, then we'll be in the bottom 4 of the 8. But yeah, anywhere between 6th and 12th is probably realistic for us this year. I think in that just middle portion.
Nice. Well, good luck. Kinda, not really.
Same
And
year, Matt. Yeah.
that same goes over the weekend. For anyone that is wanting to know the details of the games weekend again, so Thursday the 27th of March, 7:30 p.m. at Marvel. Try and get down if you can. I can understand why you wouldn't, but everyone getting down there and cheering or moaning is going to somehow help the team. I'm not going to be there. I've got a wedding in Sydney, so I will happily not be watching as much of that game as possible and hopefully stick my head into my phone every now and then and see that we're up. Dave, thanks for your time, mate. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, go Dons.
Yeah, up the pair.